Hey Internet, Chef Lethal here with another episode of Tasty Techniques for you, and today we're going to cover a comfort food classic, grilled cheese. Now of course, there are dozens of ways that you can make a grilled cheese sandwich delicious, but today I'm going to show you the basic technique of making the sandwich, and then in the future we can delve into some more peculiar recipes. Let's take a look at what you're going to need. For the best grilled cheese, you're going to need a cheese that melts beautifully. I'm using this nice butterkaas cheese from Boar's Head that I got from my local deli. American cheese is great, cheddar cheese is great, Gouda is amazing. It's up to you, but you want to make sure that it melts beautifully. You're going to need some butter, of course. What kind of grilled cheese would it be if you didn't have butter? You're going to want some bread. Obviously, this is a sandwich. The type of bread is up to you. I'm using this pretty nice Italian loaf that I've cut myself that I got from my local grocery store. Mayonnaise is optional depending on the type of grilled cheese that you're making. I'm not using any today. Equipment, very, very light. You're gonna need a saute pan. I wrote small, but I'm gonna be using a medium saute pan, but I'm also gonna be using a small saute pan to apply some pressure. You'll see what I mean in a second. You're gonna need a spatula to flip that sandwich. You're going to need some other stuff, maybe, possibly, I don't know, and then definitely some patience. Let's get to it. Now, obviously, I don't have to show you guys how to put together a grilled cheese sandwich. It's only 2 ingredients, but I will say that for this, my Italian loaf is actually a little stale. Totally fine because we're going to be covering it in butter and grilling it anyway. The only tip I will say is when you're picking your cheese or putting your cheese on the sandwich, try to get one that goes edge to edge, or even if it overlaps a little bit over the edges, it's going to be even better. It'll melt out, ooze into the pan, and make some delicious, cheesy, crunchy snack. It'd be great. And also, my bread has this enormous hole in it. That's also going to be quite delicious. With my cheese assembled edge to edge, overlapping a little bit in the corners, perfect. I'm going to take my other piece here, place it on top, and go preheat my pan. Oh, and did I forget to mention, we're making 2 sandwiches today, so you better go ahead and get your waffle iron ready. That's right guys, waffle iron. For this sandwich, we're going to be using some plain old processed American cheese slices because it melts, it's designed to melt. It's going to be awesome. But I'm also using just a regular type of sandwich bread that you get from the grocery store in the bread aisle. I'm going to opt in for 3 slices. On this one, I don't care if it's all in the center because it's going to get smushed together anyway with the waffle iron. Now I'm going to just place the top on and we wait. Alright, so before you even get going, make sure you have everything ready before you even turn the heat on. I've got a little bit of butter in my pan here. It's my medium-sized saute pan. And I've got my smaller saute pan here that I've wrapped the bottom in aluminum foil. Not entirely necessary, but it's one less dish to wash. You want to make sure if you use this technique, and I recommend it, to make sure that the smaller pan can fit inside of the bigger pan here. I've got my butter standing by over here off to the side, and I've got a 38-ounce bottle of ketchup. No, I'm not going to be cooking with it, but we're going to need this to apply pressure to the small saute pan to create kind of like a poor man's panini press. With all those caveats and talking aside, I'm going to go ahead and set my temperature. And I'm gonna go kind of low. We're talking like a medium-low heat. You wanna take your time with this sandwich. It's not something that you need to rush into. Think of it like this grilled cheese sandwich is more of a relationship and less of a one-night stand. You're gonna wanna stay with it, take your time, develop all the flavors, and your sandwich is gonna have gooey cheese and a perfectly browned crust. While my butter is melting away over here in my large saute pan, I'm gonna go ahead and plug up my waffle iron. We'll save that one for later though. We're gonna focus on the actual stovetop grilled cheese. As your butter's melting in the pan, don't be afraid to kind of pick it up and give it a swirl. You want kind of even coating on the bottom, and what we're looking for are little bubbles, and it's gonna start to smell a little nutty. Once your butter is bubbling semi-rapidly, but you're not getting any big bubbles or anything like that, just very small bubbles popping all along the surface, starts to smell very nice and nutty, and you start to get the slightest bit of color, it's time to add the sandwich. Everybody in the pool. So I've put the sandwich in. Now, here's a very important thing. There's a lot of butter in this pan that's not currently touching the sandwich. So if you feel comfortable using your hand doing this, you can, or you can just kind of carefully swirl around the pan. But just take your hands here and just swirl the sandwich around a little bit in the butter, because that butter is going to help the crust of the sandwich brown. So we're just going to make sure even coverage here. Plop the sandwich right in the middle of the pan. And now for the fun part. Aha! Now I'm going to take the smaller pan here, and with my sandwich pretty much right in the center of my bigger pan, I'm going to flop this guy on top. Now nothing's going to happen. Keep in mind, this is also pretty crusty bread that's a little stale. I need to apply some pressure. Now this pan isn't hot, so at first I'm just going to kind of muscle it down just to kind of soften the edges. It's going to sizzle a little bit more as you press out some of the air. And now for the ketchup. I would like to note that no ketchup bottles were harmed in the making of this episode. If you do not have a 38-ounce bottle of unnamed tomato ketchup, that's okay. Just pick something heavy that will evenly distribute some weight in the pan. Or if you don't have anything handy, use your hand. After about a minute or so, maybe 90 seconds, the crackling is going to intensify a little bit and you're going to hear a very nice steady sizzle. This is very good. But there's still a lot of butter in the pan around the edges. So I'm going to lift off the pressure here for a second and then do a swirl job. And it's also at this point I'm going to take a peek because I feel like my heat might be a little bit too high. I've got some pretty aggressive browning on this, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat down just a hair because we still want to cook this for another minute or so. I can still see the cheese on the inside solid. It's not quite fluid yet. Maybe not fluid is the right word, but it's still solid. It's not that melty gooiness that we want to see yet. So, under pressure. You'll also know you're on the right path when you start to see cheese oozing out the side. If you hear some extra crackling, it might be the cheese oozing down into the hot pan, and that's going to be the best part of the sandwich. The crusty cheese around the outside, sends shivers down my spine. It's been about another minute and a half, probably closer to 2 minutes now, and my first side is done. I got cheese oozing out the side all the way around. I have this huge hole in the top of my bread so I can see my cheese kind of, it's a little bit looser than it was a minute ago. So I'm going to take it out, lay it off to the side, and add some more butter to the pan. There's a good chance that your pan is going to be significantly hotter than it was when you put the sandwich in the very first time. So I like to take the pan off the heat for just a second and just kind of let it cool for a little bit, and then I'm going to toss in the butter, and it is going to sizzle much more aggressively. So just do a lot of swirling, helps cool it down a little bit. There's actually a lot more heat in the pan than I wanted, so I'm just going to let it sit off to the side for just 1 minute, and I'm actually going to turn my heat down just a little bit more, so I'm really close. I'm nudging on low heat. Another great way to drop the heat in the pan very quickly is add the sandwich back. Since the top side is still a little cool, at least cooler than the pan, it'll help bring the temperature down just a little bit. So I'm going to very carefully just drop that in, return this guy to the heat, do a little swirl first, get the butter nice and coated. And before I apply the pressure, I'm going to bring you guys in so you can see the beautiful browning I have on the top of my sandwich. Beautiful. Now we don't have any time to waste. We have about 3 minutes to cook the rest of this sandwich. So it's time to put the pressure back. Pan shouldn't be hot, so I'm going to flop it on, add the ketchup, and give it a smush. So I'm just going to let this sit for about another minute and a half, take a peek, and then we'll see what happens then. Time passes and yet our sandwich cooks. So I'm just going to take a peek. I smell the cheese very prominently. It smells awesome, but I'm afraid that it's browning quite quickly. Yeah, the browning is happening at an accelerated rate. And at this point the sandwich could be technically done, but I'm going to try to eke out a little bit more melty goodness out of this cheese. So I've just reduced my heat a little bit. I'm going to do one final swirl job here. Center the sandwich and apply the ketchup. While grilled cheese A is finishing up on the stove, why not kill two birds with one stone? I'm just going to throw this sandwich in my waffle iron and then close the lid. I think sandwich A is telling me that it's done. Indeed, my sandwich doth not lie. Cooking the sandwich like this, nice and slow, is going to guarantee that your bread is nice and evenly browned, nice and compressed, and all of your cheese is melted thoroughly. That's the important part. Tempting though it may be, let the sandwich sit for about a minute or 2 minutes before you go cutting into it, you crazy person. And don't you dare think I forgot about that waffle iron sandwich. Now, because we're using that American cheese and the pressure of the waffle iron and the bread and everything, cheese has oozed out everywhere and it's glorious. So when you take it out, be very, very careful. You want to get everything, but you also want to be careful you don't burn yourself or make a huge mess because it's already going to be kind of messy anyway. So it appears that all of the cheese inside of the waffle iron sandwich has oozed out and has browned exquisitely, but on the outside of the sandwich. So it's kind of like an inside-out sandwich. Yes, we're going to call it an inside-out sandwich, definitely not a failure. But that's going to be the end of today's episode of Tasty Techniques, guys. I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm Chef Lethal, and I'll see you next time.